This is Planet Earth. Planet Trade. This game is Planet Trade. It's kind of like Terraforming Mars with some take that twists. Sometime in the sci-fi future, Earth needs more resources. So you play as the CEO of a company to send freighters out to distant planets and take back their goods, including food that looks like that Mickey D's cheeseburgers. You'll develop different planets, manipulate demand for resources, and manage your hand of cards that do all sorts of things, including helping your economy and possibly sending a meteor to your opponent's planets. Please keep in mind this is far from the finished product. I've been told that there are already versions more fleshed out in terms of balance and components than this copy here. But we'll get to that when we get to that in the review, okay? The only other thing you need to know is that this plays from 3 to 4 players and is 2 to 4 hours. How to play! Goal is to have the most points endgame. You get that from many areas. Some notable ones are pursuing your company's hidden goal, increasing your stock, building stuff on planets, and getting these milestones for being the first to build a certain amount of things. The two main ways to build up cash to do that is A, build stuff on planets to increase your income, and B, bring your freighters to planets to load them up with cubes, then sell each cube. You'll get money for how much that cube or good is currently worth. This demand tracker is going up and down throughout the game. Let's just get to each round. So first you'll flip over 3 demand cards, which tick demand up or down for each good. Then you flip a global event, which is an effect for that round. Then it's the main phase of the game where you can start buying a bajillion things. Namely, 1. You can play cards from hand, paying the cost on the top left corner. 2. You can activate any card's ability you have in front of you. These cards are called keep cards, by the way. They're like permanent passives. Finally, 3. Just buy stuff. Like anything from this list. Buy as much as you want. Buy buildings, buy more ships, buy more trade routes, hire someone to explore a new planet for you. The only restriction here is that you can only buy each building once a round, and each planet can only have one type of building. When you place buildings, they typically increase the production of the planet's cubes. Once everyone has done that in clockwise order, then you also place ships in clockwise order, doing so one at a time. And once you place somewhere, you load up 1 cube. But you don't get the money yet. There's another phase to play attack cards from your hand on others, and these can get defended by the appropriate defense card. Then you unload all your ships, grabbing money for each cube sold, and also getting your current income. But keep all these food cubes in a pile because the population of Earth is going to go up for each of these ships. Once the population goes to 20, it resets, and every resource demand gets ticked up by 1. Now it's finally the end of the round, you replenish cubes for each planet, and then pass the first player. That's the bare basics of the game. Like at its core, every round you draw a bunch of cards, and then you see what you buy for your business. Then you possibly play attack cards on one another, and then you send your ships to planets to see what goods you actually ship. At the end of round 8, you just count up to see who has the most points. Pros. First, for components, these ships are really quite endearing in letting you put the cube inside of them. Wow, look at that ship just go down this conveyor belt to pick up cubes. How fitting. These are just prototype designs too right now, so they'll get even better, I think. The money tokens are also really nice to hold. Why don't more games have these solid cardboard tiles for money? As for visuals, we quite appreciate seeing flavor text on literally all the cards. There's over 200 cards that you could possibly draw, and they all have at least something there with varied art. The 26 global events also have flavor text. Then the resource symbols in this game make a lot of sense. Big arrow go up, that's your stock. Harvesting machine, yeah, that's fossil fuel. Cheeseburger, you already know what that is. Now on to gameplay pros. So let's talk about how this card management system meets the economic play. You always have a bunch of cards in your hand every round with a ton of varied abilities. Cards can make upgrading stuff cheaper, it can make building freighters really cheap, and this one can even straight up manipulate the global event deck. The fact that you can discard cards for 2 money lends you to be constantly unsure of ditching cards for cash, or playing the card now, or saving it for later. To bring up defend cards as an example, you can save those for some protection, or discard it now to get cash to help your economy now. Speaking of helping your economy, there's tons of ways to increase it. Every round you have 4 different buildings you can build, or you can buy more freighters to ship more cubes every round, or just get trade routes to go on more planets. Or if the board is a little too tight, you can invest in a new planet, of which you can immediately build something there. Mwahaha, no one else can build a farm there now. This gets us directly into the progression of planet trade, because you're gonna just start seeing big returns as the rounds progress. Demand, just go up for everything. Demand go up. Each cube is gonna be worth more and more throughout the game. Everyone is buying more freighters to ship more cubes, and then the production of cubes is getting better on each planet. So yeah, bring in the money. Do you also see these plus card symbols on income? This means that you get an additional card draw every round when you are on it or pass it. So that's a crazy boost in options. It's not surprising to have 30 or 40 plus credits mid-game. Then just start dumping them all for ships, buildings, upgrading buildings, you name it. This will get you from 2 freighters to 12 freighters late game. so you'd be shipping like mad. Investing in your company's assets is also balanced with the ability to pay to increase your stock. I know, a bit fishy because you're the CEO of this company, but you can literally just get 2 VP by bumping stock by 2 every round, and this action also bumps your income by 2. By just buying raw points, you're taking away from your economy though, so you gotta find out what round you should start doing this. We just talked about all the economic pros, but remember how we said that this game is kind of like Terraforming Mars, but with more interaction? Let's get into all the ways Planet Trade lets you interact, whether it be through systems that let you interact indirectly or directly. Like, since milestones are first come first serve, and there's a cap of 1 of each type of building per planet, you have to be mindful of what your opponents are building. Maybe you don't care too much if they're a little bit ahead of you on buildings if you have a bomb, ha 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 ha. You also don't want to be mindlessly building up farms, because each farm increases food production, which can let someone else build a settlement and spend your hard work of increased food production, and that player gets +3 income for doing so. Another example is using event cards to suddenly spike demand for the goods you are in position to ship this round. But you'd only do so if your opponents don't ship as many cubes as you for this color this round. And for the players, you can't trade amongst yourselves, but you can always ask someone to do something special on the board, like not placing a certain trade route down, or playing an attack card on someone else, since you can boost demand for their stuff if given the proper motivation. The whole attacking and defending dynamic really does twist the economic play too, because you only play attack cards after you buy all your stuff. But attack cards cost money to play. So then there's an idea of maybe wanting to hold back on your economic growth a little bit so you can play attack cards on someone else. This is where the mind games come in, because if you see someone end their buying phase with some cards in hand and a bunch of money, your eyebrows are gonna go up because the attack is coming in, maybe? I think maybe they're saving money and cards for the next round? If you're really calculating, you can do the attack to steal 2 money from someone else, which sounds a little trivial, but if you do it on a person going after you in attacking order, they won't have any money left to play their attacks. To start wrapping up the pros, there's a cool shout out of theme meeting gameplay in this game. We already discussed how food makes your population go up, which increases demand, but there's a little more going on with this track here. It's cool how this necessity is initially above average in value, but has a really bad ramp up in its demand track, whereas something like medicine has an insane ramp up. Food ends up functioning as a thematic way to just feed humans back at Earth with decent payouts, but loses its allure later in the game when people are a little too hoity-toity for some good old Mickey D's and want medicine. Ugh, who wants that? Also, shout out to the global event deck for theme, because something like a fossil shortage for that round puts huge emphasis on shipping fossil fuel, embargoes embargo certain goods, and there can even be a baby boom to shoot up population. My favorite here is the war, which hurts everyone, but makes every single cube worth 1 more that round. Yeah, food, I'm looking at you, you're really good during a war. Then attack cards cost 1 less to play with the war, so that is the round to super war profiteer and ship as much as possible while trying to sabotage your opponent's businesses, scummy business practice in war. The final pro is that this game runs very true to time at about 2 to 4 hours. The bulk of the game is actually in the buying phase where you get to choose to buy a bajillion things. At 3 players, once comfortable, I wouldn't be surprised to see Planet Trade taking under 2 hours. Cons. Ah, man, okay, so this cons section is gonna be a little bit different in how we normally do cons, even for a prototype game, because this draft rulebook right here was entirely written by a non-native English speaker and really hard to understand. A lot of the actual rules of the game got lost in translation, and so I had the privilege of video chatting with the designer, and then I cleared my questions up. But you, when you buy this game, you're not going to be able to video chat with the designer, right? All I can say right now is that I know for sure that this rulebook is going to look entirely different. The English and grammar mistakes on cards should get cleared up, and then even a ton of visual stuff is going to get cleaned up, which will save us about 5 minutes or so in cons. If you're still curious, one visual issue is that keep and event cards look too similar from the front. Like, just make this circle different colors if the entire card layout is going to be the same. Let's just dive into gameplay cons then. The first is the umbrella, that there's not currently the best incentives to actually attack each other, which is one of the core ideas of this game. The problem has a bit of its roots in attack cards costing money. Whereas, you normally want to spend money to increase your economy because this is an economic game. This is not a huge problem in of itself, but it gets worse. Like, you can spend money to play an attack, then the attack can get blocked by a defend card. Of course, that player had to spend money to defend, so they're a little bit behind too, but now you functionally just threw away cash and a card. Attacking cards are meant to just tear someone else down, instead of building yourself up in an economic game where you're building a business that gets benefited off of having income spikes to draw more cards. So attacking usually isn't really that optimal of a play. So what you can do is discard the money for 2 cash. And 2 cash is definitely too high of a number. If card discards were just 1 money instead of 2, that would encourage you to actually read your attack cards more often and try to use them. Then attacking cards should be cheaper overall to play, to lower the barrier of engaging in this core mechanic. Think of an economic game with take that cards. Catan, or maybe Dune Imperium is a better example. You already spent something to get the card, so playing it shouldn't cost you more. Again, we're not saying to make attacks free in Planet Trade, but make them at least cheaper. We can see why there weren't cheaper attacks in this prototype because of the global event called War. But basically, this second line of war would have to be changed. But again, this is kind of a weird con section because the numbers could already be fixed. I'm not really too sure. Yeah, we also found some weird imbalance with the event cards you can play. Like this one that just gives you 5 money, whereas discarding a card normally gives you 2, makes this card more than twice as good as just discarding another card. How about playing cheap upgrades? Upgrade settlements to a city for half cost. This is giving you effectively a +6 in value. Anyways, onwards to the next cons, because I'm not really sure how to evaluate the card balance and all this. Before nitpicks, I want to bring up these end goal cards, which really caught our eye on balance. One is the Mayor, that gives you 3 extra points endgame for each city you own. Well, cities are a very, very good building to get anyways throughout the game. Their total build path will get you 7 income, which really quickly shoots you into that draw extra cards territory of your income. And cities are inherently worth 3 points by themselves anyways. Contrast that with the other ones, like trying to set up for a massive food haul on the last round, which requires work to do, or getting benefited off of playing keep cards, which cost you money to play. The worst balancing comes from the Evil Corporation, which is a little bit of a weirder one in this game that I had to play and suffer. It's a cool idea. See, it gets flipped over at the beginning of the game when you're dealt it, and your ability is that you gain 1 stock, aka 1 point, every time you successfully attack someone. Well, I said before, attacking people is definitely a little underpowered in this game. But then this free attack of Vandals is pretty much a must draw for this guy, and it's just free points. The Vandal Evil Corporation dynamic needs to get looked into. The weird part for Evil Corp is the second line, where you get +5 income for starting a war. Seems decent, right? The problem is that there's only 2 cards out of the 150 card event deck that lets you trigger war. One of them lets you just grab the war card for 15 credits, which is really expensive. The other one lets you take it from the discard pile for only 5 credits. But keep in mind that this war card has to be already discarded at that point. And there's 26 global events. You flip over 1 every round for 8-round game. So no guarantees you'll even get the war card in your discard. Judging on how war is such an interesting global event, it could be made more likely to trigger in each game, or add in more of this manipulate a global war and make that card cheaper to play. Or you could just completely change the bottom line of this Evil Corporation. Nitpicks. Gold. It just really doesn't get enough usage to justify its entire track, because there are only 5 keep cards in the entire game that interact with it, and only 3 of those will actually let you pick up the cubes and ship it. There's 66 keep cards instead of 150 events, so probabilities aren't terrible in drawing a gold keep card at some point, but it's not unsurprising to play a game and have gold never matter at all, even though you've been pushing up its demand the entire game. This isn't affecting our final score, but it seems like gold should have been given more consideration, seeing how it has a very interesting demand track. Scoring! Now it's time for a tentative score, where we try to critically evaluate the aforementioned pros and cons, with the caveat of whether or not this is even a good idea in the first place. And of course, we're giving a lot of leeway here because, well, every time I look at a card, I'm pretty unsure if this same amount of power and strength and whatever is going on here is going to be in the same in the actual printing. Anyways, Planet Trade is going to be a 5 out of 10. It is tentatively average. I actually got to play this with multiple playgroups, including Daniel, and despite our concerns with balance and numbers, one thing was for sure, the idea is definitely solid. From the designers, I've been told explicitly that Planet Trade is going through many rehauls, but again, I can only review what I've actually played. The story of Planet Trade is that it's made from a bunch of people who really liked Terraforming Mars, but wanted something more interactive. I've never personally played a full game of Terraforming Mars, I've only played a bit of it on the app, but many of our Planet Trade playgroup has played Terraforming Mars, and they can confirm that some similarities do check out. In both, you're building up economic areas together, there's plenty of card play, you can even discard cards for money, and you can even get an individual identity to play around. Planet Trade specifically asks you to focus on your opponent's money, building upgrades, and cards in hand, whereas Terraforming Mars is a lot more pure engine building. In fact, Planet Trade doesn't really have engine building, but it does have your income ramping up and demand for goods going up. Planet Trade also leans more symmetric, since its secret company cards don't have passive abilities like Terraforming Mars, whereas most of Planet Trade's asymmetry comes from drawing a bunch of cards every round and seeing how to play them. Oh, and also the ships are more like workers in a worker placement game, which just drop down on one planet and drop one cube, then you take them off shortly thereafter. They don't really do anything besides that. Planet Trade is a freighter company simulator with a lot of take that opportunities, where the idea is that attacking others is going to offset crazy potential draws. And if someone is low in cards and or money, then you can try to punish them by playing an attack card. But you don't want that to be blocked, because if they play a defend card on your attack card, then your attack card just went down the drain. If someone else buys a planet, then you want to react by buying trade routes and freighters to keep up with the new supply of cubes being spawned now. If you really love Terraforming Mars or other Euros, but want more interaction and enjoy handling large amounts of money with large hands of cards, Planet Trade could be right up your alley for a medium-weight interactive Euro to constantly survey how to play those attack cards. Of course, in being a Euro at its core, Planet Trade needs to have its numbers be balanced. And man, I am so curious to see the recommender score raise far above 5 out of 10 with some tweaks here and there. And maybe I'll finally find out what happens with this hex right here for the moon, which is supposed to be some type of Kickstarter expansion. I don't know, I haven't played it, okay? But it is there. My personal score for Planet Trade is gonna be a 4 out of 10. I have a below average time with it. Yeah, I really think my core issue with the game is that it just runs far too long for what it is. Typically when I'm playing, I'm like, yeah, you know, it's a pretty cool worker placement. It's just a Euro, right? I push cubes around with awesome feeling credits. I like seeing numbers like income go up. I find food as a mechanic pretty hilarious. I like having more money as the game ramps up. Rinse and repeat, shipping more goods round after round. But then it's round 4 and I have to do 4 more rounds of this? Oh my god. I totally understand that Planet Trade needs to be this long though. You want time to draw through a bunch of cards in the deck to even out the balance. And everyone should really have at least 2 turns of going first, since turn order does matter for the shipping mechanic. I would actually want something that amps up the complexity of this. Like how about getting to pay money to voluntarily upgrade your freighters? Maybe they can carry 2 or 3 cubes with the right upgrades. Or maybe just have more complexity with each cube. Like make them do something unique, kind of like how food increases population. Or how about making your hidden goal more interesting, or encouraging you to keep more keep cards in front of you so you can have some sort of engine. Holy cow, am I just asking for Terraforming Mars at that point? I don't know, I haven't really fully played it, but that also really seems too solitaire for my liking. The crisis of having too much cool stuff going on for each player in a Euro hurting interaction, huh? I also find that this game is a little too fiddly for me. Like, I understand the appeal of wanting to load cubes inside the freighters, but I find it a little annoying to do, especially since the cubes don't fit perfectly. Then the counting up of food cubes every turn is taxing when everyone is constantly counting up their income anyways. It's just cubes everywhere and money flying everywhere. Some attack cards are also a little too swingy for my liking. I just don't like seeing game-wrenching cards like Meteor, where they can technically be countered, and you do know they exist so you can play around them. But it personally feels off in a Euro, although I don't have many objective issues on it aside from the high cost, as we said in the cons, but then a lower cost would get this to be played more. Without the cards in Planet Trade though, it would feel really dry. I mean, the cards are the core of the game, so I'm glad these are here to at least get me to theorycraft every turn and react to my opponents. Because balancing the increasing demand for cubes with building only 4 buildings isn't enough to keep me entertained for 3 hours. I think maybe I got it. What if you just take away half of these cubes being shipped and then clean up the visual presentation and make this game run an hour and a half, and then make the freighters actually attack each other? I could maybe think that's a 7 out of 10 for me. I'm just really missing the direct interaction here. But anyways, I know I'm not the target audience here. I haven't even completed a game of Terraforming Mars, so I'm excited to see what happens for Planet Trade. Let me know what you think of this pretty interesting Terraforming Mars game. We also got our patrons a shout out for making videos like this possible, right over here. Thank you guys so much. And then we also got our Mad Lads of Cardboard over here. Yeah, that's the video on Planet Trade. With some cleaning up, this could really be something, guys. Anyways, see you guys later. Remember to like, comment what you think of this game, or any other games I should try. Bye-bye.